I'm the Milquetoast Pundit, and today we're going to be starting a series going in depth into the various elections of 2020. We're going to be going state by state and discussing all of the House races, the Senate races, presidential races, and governor's races which may be taking place. And we're going to be going through the states in an order that I decide based on how interested and how knowledgeable I am on them. Given that, we're going to be starting with Colorado, my home state, and in my opinion, one of the most interesting cases of demographic shift in the country, in terms of realignment of the political parties, and in terms of really what this means for the future of the Republican and Democratic parties. But before we get into that, let's talk about the electoral geography of Colorado. Where are the people? What are the congressional districts? What are the important trends to think about? So to start off, let's talk about where the people are. Colorado is heavily urban, with most of its population lying on this front range that really goes up from, if you want to be honest about it, like Albuquerque and goes up to Cheyenne. But the majority of the people in Colorado live in this Pueblo to Fort Collins corridor. This is where the votes be. Outside of that, you have the mountain area, which largely cancels itself out in terms of votes. Mesa County is Grand Junction, which is a pretty major conservative bastion, and El Paso County has Colorado Springs, another conservative bastion, largely due to the Army base and presence of religious institutions and startups in Colorado Springs. The eastern plains are farmers and very rural voters, and in the north you have Weld County and Larimer County. Larimer County is Fort Collins, a fairly liberal college town type city. And in Weld County, it is centered around Greeley, a fairly conservative agriculture town type city. Taking that in mind, let's take a look at the congressional districts of Colorado and how they've changed. So the first congressional district in Colorado is centered in Denver. Democrats will always win this. It is a heavily urban district, highly college educated. It has swung even more towards Democrats in recent elections, but it is a heavily Democratic stronghold. Bracketing the first district are the 7th and 6th districts. These are the Denver suburban districts. And while based on the results here, you might think that these have similar electoral histories, this is not the case. The 7th district is the western suburbs. These are more educated and generally more affluent than the eastern suburbs, also a lot more white. But these suburbs have been very traditionally Democratic, and really these suburbs extend to the 2nd district. Or the 2nd district might be mostly centered around Fort Collins. There's also a lot of Boulder in the 2nd district. These two have very similar demographics and are very heavily Democratic, even more so today than they were years ago, because of this suburban realignment away from the Republican Party and the educational divide between the Democratic and Republican parties. The 6th district is a little bit of a different story. This encompasses the southern suburbs of Denver, which are very affluent and traditionally conservative, the eastern suburbs of Denver, which are Aurora. It's pretty heavily large percentage of the black vote, large percentage of Latino vote in Aurora, and the northern suburbs, which are the Adams County, and that exurban area, which is more agricultural, also not terribly wealthy. The 6th district is very interesting because in past elections, this was not a Democratic seat. Mike Kaufman was represented from this district, and he was an incredibly skilled politician who won it in 2012 by more than 3 points. He, in 2014, won it by almost 10 points. And in 2016, Kaufman managed to hold on to his seat despite adversarial electoral climate by 8 points. He finally lost his seat in 2018 due to the bottom falling out for Republicans in Colorado. And this is because the 6th district is heavily suburban, and the Republican votes were suburban voters who are not terribly culturally conservative and do not like populist conservatism, which is what Donald Trump and the modern Republican Party have become. So the 6th district is not going to be very competitive moving forward unless the Republican Party changes its tune significantly. And we see that the swing from 2016, where Kaufman won this seat by 8 points, to 2018, where he was ousted by 12 points, is huge. One of the largest of any district in the country, especially because it didn't get redistricted. The 3rd district is the other potentially competitive district in Colorado. Republicans generally win it with around 50% of the vote. Democrats usually get somewhere between 37 and 45% of the vote. This is a district that is not traditionally competitive, but it is centered around Pueblo, which is and Grand Junction, which are urban areas, and the mountains are not homogeneously conservative. There's a lot of highly educated, wealthy voters in the 3rd district who are toss-ups. I mean, if you take a look at the county map of the state, you see this Democratic corridor that runs all the way to the south in terms of county by county stuff, and these aren't big districts, but they are enough to make this seat, at least in the future, potentially competitive, especially because this is a heavily libertarian area in terms of their beliefs. They're not exactly in line with populist conservatism. Trump and his numbers have gone down in these areas. So let's talk about the Senate race and the presidential race for this state, because quite simply, Colorado is a case where Republicans got demographicked out. In 2012, Barack Obama won the state with 51.2% of the vote to 46.5% of the vote. And if you take a look at his margins in Adams County, Arapahoe County, and Jefferson County, you see he was winning these by around somewhere between 5 and 10 points. He won Adams by more than that. He won it by 15 points. In 2014, we see that these counties are competitive again without Obama heading the ticket. These counties revert to their partisan baseline, where they are suburban counties, and they are slightly advantaged to Democrats, but not by much. We see 6-point margins, 7-point margins in these counties where really a lot of Coloradans live. In 2016, we see that these counties really solidify against Trump, with Michael Bennet carrying them all by double digits, and Hillary Clinton carrying them all by, in Arapahoe County's case, by 15 points, but in Adams County's and Jefferson County's case, by convincing 6 to 7 point margins. This is a candidate that is far less overwhelming than Obama, who did better than Obama did in these counties. And in 2018, we see the bottom falls out for the Republican Party in these 3 counties. All 3 of them are won by double digits. 2 of them are won by over 15 percentage points. This is a great case of where the Republican Party cannot compete in the suburbs anymore, especially in the highly educated suburbs around Denver. Even going south, you have Jared Polis winning Pueblo County by 6 points, a county that is traditionally a swingy county in Colorado, where Donald Trump won it by a point. Part of this is due to the Democratic wave year nature of the election, but in Colorado, that wave year is not going to be an isolated event. The demographics of Colorado just prevent Republicans from doing well. In 2016, Trump lost Colorado by around 5 points, and I predict in 2018 he will lose it by a minimum of 5 points and probably edging on 10 points. Similarly, I expect Gardner to destroy Hickenlooper to destroy Gardner, sorry. The state is just such that even in down ballot races, Democrats do great on a statewide level. Cory Gardner is reviled in Colorado. Conservatives don't love him because he's not an adamant defender of the president. He's not making his rounds on Fox News. He's not doing what he needs to do to endear himself to these populist conservatives. He's very corporate. And Hickenlooper is a beloved governor of Colorado who, even in Republican wave years, got more votes than Gardner did. Gardner in 2014 won 965,000 votes, whereas Hickenlooper won 977,000 votes against a pretty high-profile challenger in Bob Boprez. So What does this mean? It means that Colorado is not terribly competitive in the 2020 election, barring some major development. It is very likely going to vote for the Democrat, be it Biden or anyone else, and it is very, very likely to vote for Hickenlooper or even Romanoff if Romanoff gets the nomination, which he almost certainly won't because the Colorado primary system, even though Romanoff won the caucuses really reward high participation, and Hickenlooper is far more popular than Romanoff in terms of the general public. If a primary is held, which it probably will be, Romanoff will get destroyed, probably 65% to 35%, something like that. Either way, those are my predictions, both Hickenlooper and Biden winning the state by somewhere between 5 and 10 points, with Hickenlooper having a slightly higher ceiling, and the House not changing, although watch District 3 to see if there's any movement from 2018 there. Either way, I'm the Milquetoast Pundit. This was the Colorado, an in-depth dive into the electoral geography of Colorado. Thank you so much for watching, and if I got anything hilariously wrong or you just think I'm stupid, be sure to leave a comment.